Hey everybody, it's Mindy Lincecum, your host. Welcome back to the Something New show where we like to talk about how to live a life worth celebrating. And I have a special guest here with you today. He flew in all the way from Miami to be right here in my showroom in Colorado, which is pretty cool, and our official, studios. And I'd like to do a quick introduction so that you guys know how awesome it is to have Justin here. So from a young man or a young age, Justin Rothling Schoeffer, I'm going to say that correctly,
You nailed it.
has always been self-motivated to improve, developing the discipline and work ethic necessary to excel. At 13 years old, his father said, "Son, talent will get you noticed, but consistency will get you paid." And that set up his quest on founding Own It. So we're going to talk about your coaching program in a little bit. Over the last 20 plus years, Justin has worked with Stanley Cup champions, NHL MVPs, Super Bowl champions, Olympians, 8, 9, 10-figure entrepreneurs, and Fortune 500 companies. After completing his MS in sports performance and human biology, Justin sought out postgraduate work in functional medicine. He has worked as a performance director in the NHL and NCAA and founded a private camp for professional hockey players, focusing on healing them from the inside out. He is an Amazon best-selling author for his books Intent, Blueprint, and the Own It Manual. They focused on peak performance, human optimization, and applying data and testing to create personalized blueprints. Justin's knack for making the complex simple is among the best in the performance industry, and nobody takes the latest research on nutrition, training, and recovery and packages it all into a digestible, systematic, and applicable steps, particular with the Outer Energy team with Own It Coaching. So I want to say, wow, thank you for being here. That's quite a background, quite a backdrop for who you are today and how you have developed everything you have. And I have to say, I'm a personal recipient of a lot of this. I am on my new journey with Justin and his wife Elise. We've done some blood tests and some analysis that I'm very much more aware of where I am than I had any idea I needed to be. So thanks for leading the blind, if you will. So thanks for doing that and being here today. So start out by just telling us, how long ago did you start Own It Coaching?
Well, Mindy, first off, your location here is beautiful.
Well, thank you.
And I love the studio. It like everything's just happening behind us. Like it's so
I know.
cool.
It's like the Today Show, right? It's like
literally
we're
is.
just
You're
like
in your own studio.
Here. It's like happening all around us. I love it.
It's amazing. I
Thank
love
you.
it. The journey that I kind of came on was something that is very just God-driven. And I say that this is what I was put here to do. Things make sense to me in a way that I can't explain. I had a dream when I was 11, and God said that I'll restore and redeem the health of the world. And growing up in a family that was really focused on God, and I had a relationship with him at a very young age, and that wasn't weird. And the very next day, as my dad was driving me in the car, he said, "Son, talent will get you noticed, and consistency will get you paid, and your payment will come in the form of spiritual freedom." And that really just confirmed everything that kind of existed there. And so at this 12 and 13-year-old kid who asked for a heart rate monitor for Christmas, asked for a brainwave and pulse oximeter for his birthday.
When you were 13.
Oh, yeah, 13 years old. And you have to remember, like, this is like late 90s where these things are not readily available. Like, you have all your wearable technology and access to all of this stuff. And so it was like, an investment, but also something that you had to put some work into figuring out, okay, where am I getting these things from? And reading medical journals and asking the doctors for all the raw blood work files and all this stuff. And the crazy part wasn't necessarily that I was even asking for them. It was that when I looked at everything, things made sense. And I could understand, okay, this is what I need to do. This is the habit step that needs to happen. These are the directives that I need to go on. And as I started to do these little experiments on myself, I could almost start to see the cause and effect of what was happening. And that was that was like the beginning processes of what needed to occur. And then driving into my academic career, from my undergraduate degree to my master's degree to my postgraduate work, everything I was learning, it was almost like it didn't make sense. It
made more sense to you before.
No, it was
okay.
It was that the education, it was the information was all great, but in practicality, in real life application, there was a divide. It didn't carry over into real life, because everything you were learning in theory is correct, but that's not how we operate in real life. There's the mental, there's the physical, there's the spiritual, there's the emotional, there's the integration of everything together. Because at the end of the day, we're just souls having a human experience. That's it. Not the other way around. Thinking of, okay, how do we heal the body? How do we heal this flesh? But yet, let's leave the soul to itself. And we have to create this inverse reaction. We have to go after the soul first. Like, soul health is what matters. And when we can heal the soul, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, heart, mind, body, spirit, we can ultimately live in what we call true health. And that's the transition point. That's the pinnacle of realizing what a life in true health actually feels like.
Well, I loved what you said the other day. We were hanging out and you said, in America, or probably all over the world, but that people think we have all these problems that are specific to, we have this mental health crisis, or we have this crisis, or whatever. But you were really strongly thoughtful about how your perspective is actually that we have a different kind of crisis. So could you tell us what your thoughts are on that?
Yeah, so for the first time since 1920, we've seen a 2-year decrease in average age of both men and women for death rate, ultimately. And we're now embarking on a 3rd year. This is the first time in human history that we will have a 3-year decrease in a row of the average age of both men and women, which is frightening. And we have more technology, more information, more experts, more access to all of this information than ever before, but yet we're going in the wrong direction. People say we've got, and I'll go back to kind of the point that I was making, was people say we've got this mental health crisis. We don't have a mental health crisis. We have a health crisis. We have an obesity rate of 57% in this country and an overweight issue of 69% in this country. We don't have a obesity and weight issue. We have a health issue. We don't have an identity crisis issue in this country. We have a health issue. It's all one. And the reason that we continue to have these problems and we don't make any headway, we don't take any ground, we don't take any more land in this space is simply because we treat them in disintegrated ways. And so when we treat things, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional health, in a disintegrated way, we see the disintegration of our health overall, because at our core, it's our soul.
Yeah.
And when we look at it differently, when we look at things differently, how we act also changes. And the statistics that just keep coming and getting spat out, it's like we only keep looking at problems and we don't actually start looking at solutions. I'll give you an example. We take a look at our chronic illness. Chronic illness causes or is responsible for 71% of total deaths in the United States.
Wow.
Chronic illness.
71%.
71%. If we come back to it, what is chronic illness really caused by? We've got all of these pharmaceuticals, we've got all these tools, we've got all these wonder drugs.
Probably more than ever.
More than ever.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we're seeing more incidents of chronic illness than ever before, and a
lower death rate or death age.
A faster death rate, if you will,
yeah.
A lowering of the average lifespan. Stress, our body doesn't know the difference between mental, physical, spiritual, or emotional stress. The response is always the same: inflammation and sympathetic overload. So a stress reaction. If you were to, and I think I've done this with you before, but if you were to sit back and you were to close your eyes and start imagining falling off a cliff and vividly seeing yourself tumble down, your body would start to produce sympathetic tones, inflammation that is going to start protecting your body. If you're walking down the road and you see if you're in the mountains of Arizona and you're walking down the road and you see this big twig and it moves funny and you think it's a snake, all of a sudden your body goes into this stress reaction to try to protect itself.
In the same amount of stress that it would if it was really happening.
In the same amount if it was actually happening. That is the wild thing. Your body does not know the difference between mental, physical, spiritual, emotional stress. It doesn't know the difference between whether it's real or whether it's implied. So if you're sitting here and you're all of a sudden thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do I've got to feed the kids when I go home. I've got this, what's going to happen with my business? And you start worrying,
Yeah.
Worrying and fear ultimately creates chronic stress load, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional. Our body doesn't know the difference. And the response of our body of any type of stress is inflammation. Inflammation is ultimately the cause of chronic illness.
Wow. And then you said the other night, you said something like, if you were to increase sleep, it was like a couple things. It was like, these are some of the most common things that we could do easily to help our body with stress. What were those things?
Yeah, so I break it down into big four.
Okay.
And so you've got your 4 things that you can't live without. 5 minutes or 5 days without any of these 4 things, your body dies. Food, water, air, and sleep. Like if you think about it, it's like, oh my gosh, these 4 things are pretty important.
Right.
5 minutes or 5 days without them, our bodies perish. Now, there was a study done by Harvard, a 25-year longitudinal study, and they found that these 4 areas, if we were able to optimize or increase these, we can increase our average life expectancy by 10 to 12 years. So taking us from the average of today, which is men at 72, and the average of women at 78, taking you to late 80s, early 90s.
Wow.
Which is obviously really impactful given the current circumstances of the landscape of life today.
Yeah.
And so these big 4 are if we can increase average HRV, if we can increase oxygen efficiency, if we can increase average sleep quality, and then steady our blood glucose, we can ultimately have a 10 to 12 year increase on our average life expectancy.
Wow. And for those of the listeners that don't know what HRV is, can you just do a
100%.
little a little drop there?
I love this metric, and it's something that will quite truly change your life. And the reason is because if we go back to inflammation, we go back to stress. Your body doesn't know the difference between mental, physical, spiritual, emotional stress. The body's response to stress is inflammation. Inflammation ultimately leads to chronic illness. What HRV is HRV is ultimately a single metric, a single number that gives us an insight as to how our body is adapting to mental, physical, spiritual, or emotional stress. So it's almost like a meter to see, hey, how is my body actually adapting to these stressors? And am I accumulating inflammation, or am I actually letting it flow and flush out of my body really well? And I'll give you a perfect example. If you can see me, if we're working online and you're watching me, if we were to have this cup, for example.
Yeah.
Okay. And if I was the water being poured into this, think about the water that's in this cup as stress. Okay. And if I had a straw in my mouth, that's our body trying to flush it. Okay. Trying to deal with and absorb stress. If the pace in which stress is flowing in, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, is greater than the pace
the ability to flush,
the ability to pull it out, it starts to overflow. And that's when we start to have brain fog. That's when we start to have gut issues. That's when we start to have chronic pain. That's when we start to have these debilitating insomnia attacks. Then it's when we start to have anxiety, depression. That's how it shows up in our body. That's how it shows up in everyday space. And we're living in this space of what I call fake health. It's a fake health continuum. On the far left side, you've got death and disease. On the far right side, you've got true health. And in the middle, you have this fake health space. Disease-free, but symptom-full. And that's where 90% of us live.
For sure.
And so what we're starting to identify with HRV is chronically depressed HRV numbers means that we are under chronic stress, thus under chronic inflammation, and thus living in this middle fake health space. And it's only a matter of time before that window closes from being able to be preventable to being now you have to go and create treatment. Wow. And that is a scary thing when we don't know where we are. And that's why I love HRV, is because it allows us to give a day-to-day metric, a day-to-day KPI to know, hey, where am I today? Because we all have great visions and pictures of like what true health looks like.
Yeah.
We know that we want to wake up in the morning, vibrant, full of energy, to take on every task that we have and be present and aware, and then come home at night and play with our kids and be involved with our spouse, and then put our head on our pillow, sleep deeply, wake up and do it all again the next day. But we don't know where we are today. And the fact that we don't know where we are today is we just start grabbing at every little thing, little tool, little supplement, little whatever that the world throws at us and says, hey, this is the way to get out of this. This is the way to solve this, without understanding its impact on you, without its understanding its impact on your holistic being. Because it's not just the problem that's showing up today, it's a mental, physical, spiritual, emotional component that we have to take into consideration. And what the problem is and what you're experiencing is most likely not where the root starts.
Yeah. Well, and I want to just have you say, okay, what does HRV stand for and how can you measure it? You're totally good. How can you measure it? So, it's not measurable on your Apple Watch. So how would somebody measure their HRV if they wanted to start tracking that?
So it actually is measurable on your your Apple Watch, which is which is really unique and really great because now it's accessible to literally everybody.
Okay, great.
And so when you look at HRV, heart rate variability is what it stands for.
Okay.
And if we were, I'm going to get a little sciencey here for a second, so just like buckle up.
I love it.
So
love it.
What HRV looks at is it looks at the time differences between each successive beat. So if you were to have a resting heart rate of 60 beats per minute, what we would think logically is that your heart is beating every second, very rhythmically, correct?
Correct.
But what's actually happening is your heart is beating at 790 milliseconds, 849 milliseconds, 927 milliseconds. It's beating at different time intervals, though over the 60 seconds, it's still getting those 60 beats in. And so the variance of time between each successive beat is telling us whether our body is adapting positively to the stressors we're under or negatively. The kicker here is that the more stress we're under, the more rhythmic it becomes. Why? Because our body goes into a protective mode. And so if you're going and exercising, that's a stressor. Or if you have somebody chasing you, or you're going to get your dog who's in the middle of the street, your heart will automatically start beating at more of that 1 beat per second type of rhythm versus we're sitting here, we're having a great conversation, just relaxed. Maybe you're in a meditative state. Maybe you're working on your computer and do some breath work and bring yourself back. 798, 987, 875, all over the place, a little bit more rhythmic. Thus, being, again, telling you are able to adapt and take on more stress.
You're flushing it. You're saying that's a symbol, or it's telling you your body is actually flushing it at the pace that it needs to.
Correct.
Versus, like, tell me what it would look like if you're not. If you're like, oh, I am not healthy in the stress department. What would my HRV look like?
Your HRV would be depleted. So a lower HRV score means that your body is not adapting positively to the stress and strain. Versus if it's higher, it means it is adapting well. Now, the big thing that we want to understand is that stress is necessary to grow. We have to have stress in our life. You want to build a business?
It's going to be stressful.
It's going to be a little bit of stress.
Yes.
You want to build a family? Going to be a little bit of stress.
Absolutely.
You want to get fitter? Going to be a little bit of stress. There's stress needed in order to create change. But what is the killer is chronic stress and chronic overload of that stress. And so we have to be able to identify, hey, where do I need to start changing or shifting this stress load for me? And a great way we talk about it all the time, and I give this example, is there's really 5 levels of prioritization as to like how do you figure out what matters. And we've got God number 1, myself second, my spouse third, my kids 4th, and my business 5th. When we can live in that priority spectrum, what all of a sudden happens is it gives us an amazing ability to start handling stress in a different way. Because remember, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, I'm going to come back to this over and over and over again, because we often only think of stress as like the things we can visibly see. Yeah. And we think about stress as something that you consciously are aware of. But there's so many subconscious stressors that are continually in our life, but we just don't know it because we haven't found a way in which to identify, is it happening today to me? It like, how has my last 24 to 48 hours been handled by my body? And so when we can start to articulate ourselves that way, and we can start to come back to making sure that yourself is priority number 2, only behind God, what happens is you're able to now give more of yourself to your mission, more of yourself to your spouse, more of yourself to your kids, more of yourself to your business. I had a guy, he said to me the other day, he goes, Justin, the amount of time that I gain by doing my 20-minute meditation every single morning, he goes, my 20 minutes is worth 8 hours of real intentional focused work for me throughout the day. If I miss that, I'm garbage for those 8 hours.
Wow. I was just going to ask you, what kind of productivity differences have you seen in your clients from the people that maybe thought, if I gave up an hour of work to go work out, that's really hard for me, because even as an entrepreneur, this like an hour, you're like, I can make this much,
sure,
happen in an hour. But how have you seen like it transform people's, I guess, ability to put out even more creativity, more, profitable ideas and all of that, just from maybe sacrificing what they thought was an hour of time that would be productive to their body? And now what kind of change have you seen?
Yeah, so I want you to think about this for a second. When you talk about holistic and integrated, our bodies and our health are holistically integrated.
Right.
Our souls are the integrator of our heart, which is ultimately our desires, our mind, which is our thoughts and our beliefs, our body, which is our habits, behaviors, and actions, and ultimately our spirit, which is everything around us, the people we engage with, our relationships. And the integrator between all of those is our soul. And so when we can have a healthy soul, when we can be fully engaged, we have a level of oneness. Oneness and that connectivity stream to God,
yes,
to everything, is what opens you up and puts you in this creative space. We talk about this flow state, right? You know what that's like. You sit at your computer, you're like, oh my God, 8 hours are gone. Like, what just happened? And I'm reading this, and this is a masterpiece. Like, who did this?
Where did this come from?
Who did this? Like, I need to hire them full time.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Right?
And so we know what that feels like. But all you've done when you're in that flow state is you've created a state of oneness. You've created a state of integration. You've created a state of holisticness between your heart, your mind, your body, and your spirit. And thus your soul is in a great spot. And that's what we seek. But because we silo these things, we have your therapist, we then go and, you know what, I'm going to go and just do my workout, or I'm going to eat a certain way. But then we have no focus on what's truly lighting us up inside. We have no integration between those four components. We're constantly battling the stress of what life's putting into us. And when we can't live in that state of connectedness, we can't live in that state of oneness, it's a constant state of stress, which is a constant state of inflammation, which is a constant state that our body has to fight through. And thus we don't have the energy or the focus point, productivity of what that flow state ultimately gives us.
Yeah, and I think that it's really good reminders for people like me that love to work, enjoy working. We can work harder than anybody you put us next to, right?
Oh, yeah.
We can pump it out, but it's hard to stop and take time for yourself physically, because we are not remembering how simultaneously they all have to work together. And so, when there is a mind block or a mental, like, hey, I can't get through this problem or whatever at my job, what I think is, going back to what you're saying is we probably left out that priority of, okay, I got to take care of my body too.
Mm-hmm. So it's not even your body. I like to say it like looking after your soul.
Your soul.
You have to look after your soul. And I'll give you two examples. So when I was with the Ducks in the NHL, would watch the game, be on data, be going live all game. I'd finish the game, I'd get everybody looked after, and then I'd watch video back with the live data feed to be able to understand, okay, what was the stress load on each individual player? I'd be up till about 3:30, 4 in the morning. We played 82 games.
Wow.
So 82 times a year I was doing that while traveling, while on the road, and then be up 7:30, 8 o'clock the next day just to get to the rink and be able to start implementing. So running on very little sleep and pushing and going. My coach said to me, what was this? 3/4 of the way through the season, he goes, Justin, you're world class at what you do. You're incredibly intelligent. But to be honest with you, I would take somebody less intelligent, less smart than you at 100% their capacity than what you're giving me today. And that hit me just like right smack in the middle of the face, because he was right. I was operating at like 50% of my capacity, 50% of what I could actually do, because my soul was unhealthy. And I could feel it. It was a drag every day. It was like, gosh, like again, like just give me a day off. And we all know what that feeling's like, where your mind, your body, your spirit, and your heart are just not integrated. They're not working together. There's like this tug of war happening. Another example is we had this client, a New York Times bestselling author. He's written 20 books, and I think 15 of them are New York Times bestsellers. And he was struggling. He was on deadline, and he was struggling to get into the zone to really sit down and write. And I said to him, when's the last time that you sat down and really got clear on A, what you were doing this for, and B, when's the last time you did something just for you? And he goes, I have no idea. And I said, okay, so what do you do just for you? And he goes, man, I love to water ski. Like loved it. And I was like, okay, great. He literally, guy lives on a lake, has a boat right in his backyard.
But doesn't ever go.
Hadn't gone in like 2.5 years. And I said, okay, over the next 2 weeks, I want you to go 3 times each week. He's like, there's no chance. Like I have a deadline in 2.5 weeks. I have to write a book and I have barely an outline. And he's like, and he's starting to panic, and he's like pushing. And I was like, just trust me on this. And so he went out, first day, went out for an hour, came back in. He's like, nothing. Went the second time, nothing. Third time, I hadn't heard from him in like 48 hours. Went out the fourth time, and I get this video message, and he video messaged me. He's got tears streaming down his face. He goes, Justin, I get goosebumps and I tear up and I never tell a story.
I have goosebumps right now. I have goosebumps right now.
He goes, I was out on the water, and as I was out on the water, I spent 6 hours out on the water yesterday, and I wrote my entire book out there. Everything just started coming to me. He goes, I was in such a flow state. I haven't been there in years. He goes, I was connected. I had a level of like true oneness that I've never had before. I had a level of like clarity that I've never had before. My body was free. My mind was connected. My heart was inspired, and my spirit was just lifted to a level that I could not comprehend. And I was like, I started laughing. And I was just like, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Holistic integration. And we talk about that. Those words are used so irresponsibly in our society today and in our world today, because you list up like holistic medicine or holistically integrated medicine or integrated businesses, whatever you want to talk about. But the definition of holistic is all, like right. All encompassing. Integrated means together. And so if you're only looking at your physical health, you're missing 75% of the story. If you're only looking at your mental health, you're missing 75% of the story. If you're only looking at your emotional and spiritual health, you're only looking at 50% of the story. We have to look at it all together in order to live the life that God intended us to. And I see it so often. We see it with our spiritual leaders. They're so dialed in spiritually, so connected, but they're missing 75% of the other positions. They couldn't go and run a mile. They can't look after their kids or have the togetherness with their spouse, because physically and mentally they're completely off the mark. We see that with us in our businesses all the time. We're like, people, especially entrepreneurs, feel like they are so committed. Their heart, they know exactly what their desire is. They know what they want to put into this world, but they are so focused on the heart side of things that they let the mental, emotional, and physical component go, and they wonder why they run out of steam. They wonder why they break down at a certain point. They wonder why they feel like they've had to exchange their health for their mission.
Like a sacrifice almost, yeah. And
when we actually lean into it, we're all built for greatness. We've all been built with this to be world class at something. But in order to realize the pinnacle of the gift that we've been given, we have the responsibility to make sure that we are keeping this vessel that we're operating in, this vehicle, holistically well. Because otherwise, we can't drive it to the level in which we need to. We can't be trusted with
more.
With more, exactly.
Yeah. I think, I just want to compliment you and Elise have completely challenged me, even though I knew in the heart of my deep being that, I need to work on the health part of my, well-being. And I hope people will watch this also on YouTube and not just listen to it, because to be able to see your passion, it's very convicting in a lot of ways, just to remind all of us watching that, you can't truly accomplish the world-class level of whatever you're called to do, which we're all called to do different things, right? I mean,
100%.
I'm in the wedding industry and you're in a completely different industry, but what's similar, and I think what drew our friendship together, is the value on, that priority list, God, family, and then start to make a difference in the world, right, with our callings. And I think anybody listening, whatever walk of professionalism you have, I hope that you're in a good way triggered today, in a good way convicted today, that if you've been holding back on the health element and the physical part, and like you said, it's all of them really. Maybe somebody listening is a different area, but just the physical is so important to not neglect, and to think, just because you're symptom free. That was huge when you said that. You said 90% of us or something are living in this
disease-free, symptom-full,
disease-free category. And I think that's me, right? Here I am in my 40s, no real symptoms of anything, feel pretty healthy, but truly, I'm sure I'm not, so you guys are helping me, which I want to say thank you. We've been doing a lot of the tests and trying to figure out how to just optimize, because I do desire to be the best version of myself so that I can do everything God has called me to do. And I know I cannot without all 4 of the categories being strong.
100%. And when you think about that disease-free, symptom-full, it's you don't have the chronic illness, you don't have the diagnosis, you don't have anything, but yet you've got brain fog throughout the day.
Sure, absolutely.
Your energy wanes at 2:00 in the afternoon. You feel like you have to have a nap. You get irritated at the drop of a hat.
Or a headache.
Chronic headaches. You can't eat without feeling bloated. These are not normal. This is symptom full, and it's your body trying to communicate with you what's going on. I tell this story all the time where I got off the plane in Vietnam. We were traveling, and obviously I don't speak Vietnamese, and so I land, and everything's in Vietnamese. Like, nobody speaks English. And so I get there, and I'm like, man, I've got a little bit of frustration. I got a little bit of irritation. I got a feeling of chronic overwhelm. That's the way our bodies feel all the time, because it's communicating to us, but we don't speak the language of our body. We don't know. And so it's saying, hey, Justin, I'm chronically, I'm tired, I'm overstressed. I'm going to give you a headache because I can't take it anymore. But you're like, nah, I'm just going to throw back this ibuprofen and my headache will go away, numb it, and I'm just going to keep pushing on. But then it's going to keep coming back and keep coming back. Or this brain fog, you're like, man, I came into this room, I can't remember why I came in here. I had a thought, if I didn't write it down, man, it's gone. That's not normal. That's not the way our body was supposed to operate. And it's because mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, we've overstressed our system and haven't given ourselves this place. And forever, we've just been justifying why we're feeling this way. We've been saying, oh, this is what it takes to be an entrepreneur. Oh, this is what it takes to be a great husband or wife. Oh, this is what it takes to be a mother or father. Oh, this is what it takes in this season of my life. No, that's not true. That's not true. It's the world telling you that. It's the lies that the world continues to put on you. And life can actually be, you can actually feel at ease as you're going through this. You can actually feel at peace. You can have this freedom that exists while continuing to stress yourself, but being in alignment, holistically integrated, so that your body functions at a whole nother level that you haven't even realized yet.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to have you answer a pretty good question here, but before you do, can you tell people where they can find out more about you or continue to grow in all of these areas that you're talking about? Where can we learn more from Justin?
Yes, so I'm super active on Instagram. It's at Justin Roth. And then just go to ownitcoaching.com. Those are 2 places I think are pretty good.
Okay, great. Well, can you tell some of our listeners, if they are just literally resonating with the stressors, resonating with the, I feel everything you just described, but where do I even begin? I mean, I think that was me in the gym today with you. We were like over in the weight section of the gym, and I was like, okay, Justin, I have no idea what I'm doing here. I'm way more comfortable over on the treadmill. You know, I can just kind of crank that treadmill, but you were so patient, and Elise was awesome and showing me form and all the things that are going to help me in my journey. But if somebody's sitting here going like, man, I'm pretty sure I have stress, or I'm pretty sure I don't sleep well, or I'm pretty sure I get headaches and brain fog and all of that, but I can't really stop. Like, I mean, my day tomorrow already has meetings for the next year, you know? So what would you say, baby steps? Where's the entry point that you would say to start?
Yeah. So the first thing I always say is we have to figure out where you are. I think I tell this story is I live in Edmonton, Alberta, home to the biggest mall in the world. It's
in Alberta, Canada?
Oh yeah, Edmonton, biggest mall in the world.
Biggest mall in the world?
Look it up, West Edmonton Mall.
Okay, I'm going to have to go there one day.
It's about 45 phases. It's got a golf course, a skating rink, a submarine thing. It's got another pool and water slides, Galaxyland, and then all the stores intermixed in between. So
wow,
it's huge.
Sounds cool.
So I went back there first Christmas, back in a long time, and parked my car at D3, big green sign right outside of the water park. I walked in, did my thing, was in there for 2.5 hours, and as I was coming out, I was like, man, I don't know where my car is.
Yeah.
I know it's at D3. I know it's outside the water park, but I don't know where it is. And that's like a lot of us right now is we don't know where we are. We know where we want to go. We know how we want to feel, but we don't know how to get there. And so what did I do? I went to the directory map. And when I looked at the directory map, what was the most important thing I saw on that map? The little red dot that said, you are here. Because as soon as I knew where I was like, oh, got to walk up, take a right at Booster Juice, and then take another left, and
you'll be there.
There's the water park in D3.
Yeah.
For us, we have to know where we are every single day. And if we don't know where we are every single day, we're going to start to take lefts and rights and lefts and rights and lefts and rights that are going to keep us perpetually lost and continuing to realize the same results that we get every single day. And so HRV is that number that keeps us on track, understanding, man, HRV is depressed today. Like, what did I do the last 2 days that get me here? Well, didn't sleep very well, didn't eat regularly, dehydrated, didn't give myself any space for myself, didn't do any form of activity. No wonder my body's overstressed. And so we have these set of like 8 controllables, these 8 areas that really impact HRV: exercise, nutrition, immune function, hydration, sleep, environment, self-care, and mindset. And those 8 areas are all going to have an impact on HRV. And so if you're starting, I want you just to start getting used to every single day in the morning, first thing, is looking at what your HRV score is. And it's individual for each and every person. And someone's going to say, well, what's an action step I can do? Like, help me with this.
Yeah.
The first thing is getting aware of what's going on.
Like, what is your regular number?
Correct. Yeah. Because here's the thing, is I could tell you, just like every other person you'll find on Instagram or every other person you'll find on a podcast telling you, hey, you need to get 7.5 hours of sleep. You need to eat constantly throughout the day. You need to give yourself like 30 minutes of meditation time. Like, we know what to do.
Right.
But we don't know where we are, and we don't know what impacts us. And so if we can't build Mindy's routine, or we can't build Justin's routine that fits with my lifestyle, what I'm bought into, something that touches my heart, like my desire, what I want, it's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to be something that is long lasting, something that is really integrated into my day-to-day life, and something that I'm going to prioritize to make sure that I can spend 30 minutes a day, that I realize that 30 minutes buys me 8 hours of highly productive work time,
right,
and makes me feel really good and actually moves the needle for me in the HRV category and drives it in that direction. And so if we look at what our HRV score is regularly, and just as a rule here, if you're 40 or under and you are not seeing an HRV of 40 or greater, chronically depressed HRV. If you are 50, 55 or older, and we're seeing a number of 35 or less, again, something to pay attention to. There's that chronic depleted HRV number that we're going to have to take action on. So understanding HRV, starting to track that, starting to look at it, and then being able to correlate your behaviors to that. Just start changing one thing at a time. And this is where I'll kind of step in here. Sleep is going to be the biggest thing that you can start to give yourself in that category. It's our superpower. It's something that just pours into us in a different way. And
are you pretty strict on like sleeping at the same hours every night, or just the amount of hours?
So if consistent sleep and wake time is the number one thing that creates hormonal regulation when it comes to depth of quality of sleep, because our body now gets into a uniform circadian rhythm. And we've all heard that word before. And really it's a word that basically tells us that there's a melatonin and cortisol interaction. And that cycle throughout the day is what we're really worried about. So a constant or consistent sleep and wake time, I usually say within 30 minutes of each other, is going to be ideal. So if you can go to bed between 10 and 10:30, wake up between 6 and 6:30, 90% of the time, you're winning. Then we interact with a 3-2-1 rule. And this is something you can integrate in really easy.
Right away, yeah.
So 3 hours before bed, no more major meals. 300 or 400 times more melatonin is produced in our gut than is produced by the pineal gland in our brain. And so if we can eliminate taking in a major meal 3 hours before bed, so if we're saying 10 o'clock, nothing after 7,
right,
then our body also is not sending blood to our gut to help digest. It's another stressor on our body. Remember, everything in this world is stress. Everything is stress. Everything. And so if we can eliminate that stressor, it's going to be key. So 3 hours before bed, no food. 3 hours after wake up, no food. And start there. That is going to be a great option. Number 2 is 2 hours before bed. So 10 to 7, no food. 10 to 8. At 8 o'clock, no more work. So no more hard decision making. Nothing that's going to, again, ignite stress in our mind that we have to start working through. So put the work away. No emails, no texts, no problem solving, no deep conversations with our spouse that are all about like organization, problems that we have to solve. At 8 o'clock, put that away. And then at 9 o'clock, no more blue light, and eliminate and enter into like some type of parasympathetic routine. So a nice bath, stretching, yoga, meditation, breath work, relaxing.
Is reading okay?
Reading's great.
But only from a book, not from your phone.
That's right. That's right. And so if we can institute that, so number 1 is start to track HRV. Understand where you are. What is your
starting point? Yeah.
What is your quote unquote current norm? And if you fall under that 40 number, we're going to want to create a change. And then number 2 is start implementing this 3-2-1 rule.
Okay.
At night, and you'll start to notice, again, an increase in HRV as you start to adhere to those, and then you can start stepping into the other 8 controllables.
Well, and I love following you on Instagram. Everybody should follow you on Instagram because you are challenging me, whether you know it or not. Every morning he posts on his stories, wake up the sun, and so he is always out and working out before the sun comes up. So he is waking up the sun, bringing that sunrise in as he's already like an hour into his sweat. And I'm like, okay, Justin, you are so what is your typical go to bed time and wake up time?
I'm in bed every night. Man, I'm just going to get flack over this. I am in bed every night around 9:30.
Hey, that's good. That's good. And
I'm like a 90-year-old man. But no, I get into bed around 9:30. And then I've got a little night routine that I do, and I'm usually sleeping by about 10:15, and then wake up every morning at 6, and then
you're in the gym,
and then get going.
You start in the gym. I
actually start out on the balcony doing some breath work and gratitude, about 15 minutes, and then I start getting going.
Well, I'm feeling really lucky because the other night for my husband's birthday, Justin and his wife and my husband and I stayed up until 1 a.m. talking. So we really broke up your sleep ideal time. Sorry about that.
But you know what? We were like, this is where I love that you said that, because there's no such thing as perfection. And if your norm is 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, midnight, 11, 1, 2, that becomes an issue. But when it's the minority, it literally gives you the bandwidth to be able to do that and still wake up and have a vibrant
morning,
day.
Yeah.
What was that? It was Saturday night
that
we did that. I woke up on Sunday, church day, Still woke up at 7. I think I woke up at 7 an hour later, but still went to the gym, still got everything in, had a great day, didn't need a nap in the afternoon. Why? Because you've given yourself so much like leeway in, and we go back to that cup analogy, is my cup is not nearly overflowing all the time. So when I stay up one night because I really want to, it's not going to cost me a whole nother day. It's just simply something that happened. And then last night, Elise and I were back in bed at 9:30, 10 o'clock. Up this morning at 6 and away we go. Like it's like it didn't even happen.
I love that.
And that is the ability to give yourself ownership over your health again. And when you can literally live in this integrated and holistic way, you give yourself the ability to do more, to be more impactful, to have a life that is fruitful and fulfilling and big, because that's what we all seek.
We all want to make a difference in this world, right? And then I'm sure you just made me think, so that people hear this too, is that I'm sure that you have a pretty diligent eating routine, but it might apply the same way as sleep, is like the one-off, if it's not the regular, the one-off, I'm going to have a treat because it's this big special occasion or whatever, is you can still bounce right back into your routine because it's not the norm.
100%. Last night was our anniversary and we sat at dinner and we split tiramisu and like 9 scoops of sorbet. Like,
was it amazing?
It was outstanding. It was outstanding. But again, like, was up this morning, was at the gym, and away you go, and I'm back on my routine. Like, that's the piece that comes with this, is the more that you can love and have a purpose and intention, the better it becomes.
I love that. Okay, well, Justin, every day that we do a show here, we wrap up by having our guests share their favorite beverage with us. So could you tell us what beverage we're about to try today?
It is going to be super creative for everybody. It is club soda. And
okay, club soda. Okay, tell me why you like this. Why is this refreshing for you?
Oh, I just love the bubbles. I love the carbonation, to be honest with you. I drink so much water, and whether it's I'm putting in BCAAs or whether I'm putting in Element or electrolyte mixtures that I need for myself, like, I love something that just it gives me a different.
And is it better to have club soda than like sparkling water? Or are they the same?
They're the exact same. The big thing you want to notice if you're drinking a carbonated beverage is that it doesn't have any sugars or aspartames or artificial sweeteners or anything else, but just as pure as possible.
Okay, I love it. Well, ready? 1, 2, 3. Cheers.
Cheers.
I'm going to try your club soda here. Pretty good.
It tastes like club soda.
Well, and it's better than, like you said, just staying bored with water all the time.
That's right.
So
that's right.
I love that. Well, you guys, thank you so much for tuning into the Something New show today. We loved having Justin. Man, I could go a whole nother hour with you. But we're thankful that he's a part of this show. But if you want to keep in touch with him, follow ownitcoaching.com or follow him on Instagram at Justin Roth. And then again, we'd love for you to like this episode, subscribe, tell your friends about it. It's everywhere on podcast and on YouTube. And thanks for being with us today on the Something New show. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the show, rate, review, and share with a friend. Also, follow the Something New show on Instagram and Facebook. If you want a fuller experience, watch the show on YouTube to help you create a life worth celebrating.